Hey, welcome to Book World: The Great Escape. I'm author CJ Peterson. My co-host over here is author Michael Scott Clifton. Today we have a wonderful guest down here, author Patrick Seaman. But before we get there, Mike, how was your week?
Well, I'm recovering from the previous week. I've been going to the Texas State boys basketball tournament every year since 1988. And the only year we haven't been able to attend was the COVID year, or actually the year following the 2020. And anyway, it's in San Antonio. It used to be in Austin, and it's at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Lots of walking. My walkometer, I walked 13,000 steps one day, 6.7 miles, and it's about 6 miles a day. Anyway, I got to see a lot of great basketball, and that's something we look forward to every year. And one of the things besides writing, which I like to do, is gardening, and it's finally warmed up enough to start getting out and doing some things. And pretty much that's what I've been working on most of this week since I've got back from San Antonio, is getting the yard ready and trying to pull weeds, mow grass. We have some massive sweet gum trees around our house, and if there were a market for sweet gum balls, I would be a multimillionaire at this time. And so the problem is getting rid of them, and that is always a problem. And we celebrating my grandson turned 3 on Friday of last week.
Happy
we will be
happy birthday to him.
Seemed like he was just a baby yesterday. My time flies, and we'll be celebrating his official birthday this Saturday. So we're looking forward to that as well. So March is kind of a slow month for me author-wise. April, I've got 3 events the first week of April. I'll be speaking to high school creative writing class in Lindale High School. And then we have the Longview Art Walk and Dalton Days in Longview as well, which are on Thursday and on Saturday of the same week. Just fell out that way this year. So we usually go to those as well. And anyway, like I said, March is usually pretty quiet in terms of book events. But it picks back up in April.
Nice. Well, Marissa says hi. Hi, Marissa. For me, basically, I'm taking 15 credit hours. It's midterm time. So I've had 4 exams in the last week and a half, and I have one more after spring break. Spring break is next week. So doing well. Plugging away at it. My next Comic-Con is going to be Longview Comic-Con. It's called East Texas Comic-Con. That's the first weekend in May. So pretty excited about that down in Longview, Texas. Other than that, honestly, it's just keeping my head above water with classes. So I'm loving every minute of it. It's just a lot. So trying to get it all in there. And then eventually, I'm also still working on that project with the teens. I don't know if you guys remember me telling you about that, where basically this group of teens that I taught in Pennsylvania this last summer, we're basically doing an anthology book. So each person is writing one chapter in the book and making it flow together. And it's going to be a trilogy. So we're on chapter 7, I believe. They have about 2 weeks to write their chapter. So they're doing really good. It's really good. It's interesting when I get it back. And so I'm trying to stay as hands off as I can, but all of the chapters have to come through me. And they're trying to keep the same voice through it with their own style, which is kind of a unique way to do it. It's a fantasy, and I'm super excited to see how this one actually does turn out. And in the meantime, I'm also still working on my trilogy somewhere in the middle of all that schoolwork. So that's fun. Gearing up for summer classes as well. I have one that they call interim classes, where it's literally a semester's worth of work in 1 week. So that's fun. And then there are 2 I have actual summer classes that are 4 or 5 weeks, I think. We're cramming a semester's worth of work in that amount of time. So it's fun. I'm enjoying, like I said, every minute of it. I'm going for forensics and psychology. So lots of cool stuff. So today we have author Patrick Seaman. Howdy, sir. How are you?
Great. How are you all?
Good. So I explained to those who watched last week that yours is Fractional, CXO, and Futurist. Can you explain, first of all, what that is?
Well, as I've been doing startups since the mid 90s, and um, sometimes that means that I start up a company. Sometimes I will come in full time and help get a company either through a crisis or get a startup going. And sometimes I work part time as an advisor or interim role, as like an interim CEO or something like that,
Okay.
where I would come in and help companies. So typically, what I do is I work with small companies and get them through pivots, start product launches, crisis. A key person leaves, and oh my God, what are we going to do? Um, I was joking with a friend of mine the other day that she was asking about the same kind of questions you are, and I explained that I got a call from a friend, and they were working with a company that had this problem, and we've got to launch a product in 90 days, which leads to this rabbit hole that you fall down into of you know um, seat of the pants engineering and getting things done. Um, and then there was the other time that somebody called, and it was like I started to notice a trend that and she said, maybe you shouldn't answer your phone. Because I keep falling down these rabbit holes. People like say, what happened to Patrick? Well, we haven't seen him in a while. That's usually why.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, fractional, because sometimes I work with more than one company at the same time,
Got
um,
it.
because they're at different stages. I'm advising two different companies right now. One is in water remediation, cleaning up things like mine water, mine tailings ponds, that sort of thing. And the other is a streaming project that is sports related and may end up having the AI component in a later phase. Just different stages. Try to look for interesting problems.
So do any of these problems ever find their way into your books?
Oh, there's those who know me, will recognize things. Usually it's like a setting. I don't do I don't do actual people in a way that would be recognizable.
Right.
But our life experiences inform our writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh, the, it gives you the depth. It gives you that texture
Mm-hmm.
that just imbues your settings and your personalities and the flow of things. So it's all in there. If you want to know me, read the books and you'll know me probably more than you want to.
Now, I tell people that there are parts of me that are in the books and parts of them are made up, and I'm not going to tell you which one's which. You have to figure it out
Oh,
yourself.
definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we when we write, um, it's a form of acting, because
Mm-hmm.
you become your characters and your characters become you, and the line between the two sometimes gets a little blurry.
Mm-hmm.
um, they when we put when Blake and I, my son and co-author, when we plan, um, we do an outline. And so right now we're working on book 5 in our series together.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually planned the first 5 books. We had an actual plan for those, and we're following that. But it's there's a distance between your plan and your uh, you know your outline, and what actually happens, because your characters get involved and they do things on their own. Sometimes they get themselves killed. You know,
Hate it when
and
that happens.
I mean, they're people. They're real to us. I mean, it's hard for people to understand. When we first started this project years ago, the first thing we did was put our characters together. We built a cast of characters. Who do we want to start with?
Mm-hmm.
And so we built character dossiers, and we did artwork for each of the characters and put them up on the wall, so that when we had our, planning sessions, we could, walk over and what would Ignacio do? What would Gail do? And, then arguments ensue between the two of us about, how characters are going to act and so on. But, it's all character driven, and we spend so much time building these people, building their lives, and living their lives vicariously, that they drive the story within. They're not really guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain. I mean, because things do change. I mean, the outline that we originally had does resemble strongly, where we've ended up. Not, remotely close to 100%, but, there's a strong family resemblance, to where we are now versus where we thought we would be.
So Patrick, or would y'all of course, I'm going to probably beat CJ to the punch here, but would you consider yourselves to be planners or pantsers? Are you organized? Sounds like you have a pretty good idea, like you're leaning toward the planner stage, but I don't know. So
The dossier was my clue that they're probably planners.
Yeah.
Well, to a degree. I mean, we set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
We create a character. We we go, when we originally create a character, we'll say, okay, what would this person's background be? Where would they have gone to school? If they went to school, what kind of jobs have they had? What's their family? Where'd they come from? All of that, so that we know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we set that stage, and then, we have, the various subplots that, that we start with. And, one thing leads to another, and then things happen that we didn't expect, and it creates issues.
Mm-hmm.
In our case, because we start with a current day, Texas city, and military base, and the people associated with it. So it's a comfortable setting from the standpoint of it's recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
The
Sure.
people are recognizable, their motives, their backgrounds, all of that, they're all recognizable, and people that you could identify with. And then we thrust them into these circumstances that are so far outside of their experience, that they have to then rise above what they ever thought their lives would be. And
Mm-hmm.
Blake and I made a very intentional decision at the beginning that we wanted our characters to rise above and not fall below.
Mm.
Okay. We wanted our, to see our main characters become more than themselves, than they thought they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And not like so often happens in a lot of stories, of a, in this kind of genre, where you see people not do that, and, descend into, doing, bad things. We don't want Lord of the Flies. We want something better. Now, that's not to say that everybody is goody two shoes, because there are bad people, and bad people do bad things, and that does
Mm-hmm.
happen. because they are people. Humans haven't really changed in all of known history. You can take our daily dramas that we have today, and they're totally recognizable in any of the written or verbal histories throughout, all of our known past. We're the same people that we were 10,000 years ago. We had families. We treated each other. We betrayed each other. We supported each other. We rose above. We fell. We did all the same things then that we do now. We just do them faster.
Mhm.
But
So,
in terms of planning, yes, we do plan. We do plot. We set the stage, but then our players have minds of their own.
gotcha.
And they take us in unexpected directions.
So, what's it like working with your son? How do you guys work on it? Like I explained with the teens, each one has their own chapter. There's some people who have talked to where they have a co-author and they do every other chapter. Some of
Mhm.
them work together intrinsically all the way through.
What we do is a little different. We work together on the big picture, on the big storyline, the major subplots. He is responsible for certain aspects of the story. When it comes to certain characters that he has adopted, then he's the showrunner for those characters, that decides how he wants them to behave. That he's sort of adopted, that he likes these particular ones.
Mhm.
And there are certain plot elements that he's responsible for. We've agreed that he will take and he will either write or be the editor for. And in particular, he has taken the mantle of running the, shall we call, the certain aspects of the military movements. Anything that's more ground based, the ground troops, that sort of thing. He is responsible for making sure that those are as accurate as we can make them. And then we collaborate on other technical issues. I do the majority of the writing, so and I keep that continuity, of the overall story. But he takes certain elements that that he wants to do, and then we collaborate on the big picture.
I'm assuming you're working on your fifth book, correct? Is that what I understand? Fifth book in the series?
In the series, yes.
So I'm assuming that you've got all the bugs worked out in this collaboration, but maybe it didn't start off that way, and you've had to work through some things.
Sure.
Am I assuming right?
Well, I mean, a number of years have gone by since we started this. I mean, we started this about, I don't know, 10 years ago. He was still in high school at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And honestly, that's why we started it, because let's just say that school was not a challenge, or enough of a challenge for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a need to get him involved in something that wasn't as ephemeral, because schoolwork is ephemeral. It just goes away. Anything you do, there's nothing that lasts, that in his perspective. And so I wanted to start something that, he could see build over time. And also at the same time, begin to teach him things about content management, about basically project management, because this is a project. So a lot of the skills that go into building this, keeping track of everything, organizing, these are a lot of the same skills that he would use,
Right.
in his professional career.
Yeah.
So it started preparing for him for these things. Now, of course, keep in mind also at the same time, he has been a, you know, a junior intern all the way up to worker in all the startups and things since he was a child. You know, since he was little. He was beside me in all of those endeavors. So he's had a huge education already, even before he got out of school. He knew how things worked. He knew how companies worked. He knew a lot. But you know, this was just another part of that. You know, to me, this was another part of that education, and I wanted him to see something, you know, that he could look at and say, "I did that." At the same time, he also composed original music, theme music. He produced an album. He's a classical composer, and as you know, on the side. And so the themes from the stories, you know, he puts into some of the music that he
Wow.
He
That's
creates.
cool.
Yeah, it is.
So when I wrote my Team Angel series, it was a series of about 13, 14 books. And each series, some of the characters crossed over storylines into others. And I was in them for about 10 years, which that's about where you said you guys are. And
Mhm.
so it's like there were times where I've had to just delete scenes because I'm too attached to these characters to want to kill them. But then in the end, the last one, I wanted to give it the right oomph
Yes.
because people had been with it for so long. So my
Yes.
question is kind of twofold. Number one, how many books are going to be in this series?
Hmm.
And do you feel the same way about your characters?
Um, you know, we have we wanted to create an environment where um, you felt like we wanted to do world building.
Hmm.
It's not just telling a singular narrow story. We wanted to build a world, and so we tell the story from multiple perspectives. So we have a lot of different characters that they'll have an arc that they'll go through.
Hmm.
And so by book 5, some of those characters either are no longer with us, or some of those characters have gone through their arc and they've achieved sort of what we had
Yeah,
in mind.
right.
At the same time, we started to have to bring in, you know, we've been building new characters. We've built a whole new story arc for another group of characters that, because of circumstances that were beyond my control as the mere author, we now have another whole group of characters that are off on their own, creating their own story that is running in parallel. And so, you know, we're building them, we're growing them. Some of them sort of are sort of fading, you know, from the light. You know, we don't visit them as much because they've gotten to where they've reached this, you know, this more or less static point for them. Um, and but others, you know, are growing. Some of them have had ignominious ends, um, and you know, we had a huge reveal at the end of book 3, and then the resolution of that during book 4. You know, that tied up a whole series of subplots that had been central. But while that was going on, other things emerged on their own.
Right.
So it's growing. In terms of how many more books, we originally envisioned this as accomplishing a certain amount of things within the first 5 books, and we're doing that. So what's happening is we're in book 5. Book 5 will be the culmination of a lot of things. And then we really envision probably another 5 books for, you know, sort of the second act of the story,
Right.
taking us into, you know, a broader universe.
So has it with series, and we've talked about this before on Book World, seems like as you move from book 1 to 2 to 3, or however many, like CJ, what did you say, 12, 13? How many in the Teen Angel series?
Technically 13, and then there's
13.
a novella that goes at the end of it.
Well, So, and I have a 4-book series, The Conquest of Vale. But my experience has been, I wanted to ask you if this was you and Blake, your son's experience. Does each successive book become a little harder because of all the moving parts? And when you move from one book to the next, there's even more moving parts. Has that been your experience, trying to keep everything in a tight, all, like you said, tying things, loose ends up, because you have more characters, more plot twists, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. We've had to maintain a database, um, really from the beginning. Fortunately, we did that from the beginning, to keep track of things. And we have database, we have spreadsheets. We use all the IT tools that we can manage just to keep track of things.
Wow.
We still find that we made mistakes here and there, little things that it's like, oh, how did that happen? We had Michael Kramer recorded book one, the audiobook. And in doing that, there was one little thing that came up that was like, oh, how in the world? It's totally inconsequential, but it was like, how did we miss that? So even now, after so many, because we'd already done numerous small edits, on each of the books, because every time you do a new book, you go back and you review the previous, so we thought we'd fixed, but as a former publisher, one of the things that I learned in one of the companies I started up, which I had for 5 years, every edit cycle finds precisely 50% of the errors.
Yeah, there's no
If you
such
think
thing
about
as a perfect book out there.
That's right.
you'll realize you'll never find all of them, because each time you only find half.
Yep. So we have a few minutes left. So your books, the basic genre to them is futurist, right?
The genre is a blend of military science fiction and space opera. If those are
Okay.
two subgenres within science fiction.
So what makes yours different than others in that genre?
Um, Others tend to be one or the other. They tend to be space opera, or they tend to be military. Ours, on top of that, begins with a setting in the current day, and with a million-year backstory, and taking us forward. So what makes us different is there are some of the things that I mentioned before, where we wanted to make sure that we had characters that rise above
Mm-hmm.
and become more. We wanted a more positive outlook
Mm-hmm.
on things, and so what we've done is we've created this setting, where we initially isolate our characters. They wake up inside a 4,000 mile long McKendree cylinder, which is like an O'Neill cylinder, but a heck of a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And they are isolated. They're alone, and they don't really find out until much later what has happened to them, what happened, to Earth, and a lot of other things. So there's a very, very deep depth to this, and a rich tapestry of characters and setting.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Best wishes for you and your son as you guys head into the second half of the series, so to speak, if you're about halfway through. If you want to learn more about Patrick Seaman and his son in the books, go ahead and over to patrickseaman.com. For those who are listening, that is going to be spelled www.patrickseaman.com. Again, thank you for coming on today, sir. Next week, we're going to be talking about emotional triggers and how to handle them. So don't miss it next time, next Wednesday at 4 o'clock p.m. In the meantime, have a good week and happy reading.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.